Hey, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything about Ivan?
I have not heard anything about Ivan. Ivan is supposed to get out of the ICU in like 2 to 3 days.
So he was conscious then, because it didn't look like he was.
No.
Conscious.
So
in that.
he is completely sedated, and they wake him up for like an hour to 2 hours a day. They try to talk to him, but he's completely like out of it, right? And so just to wake him up and make sure that, hey, another day's gone by, so he doesn't wake up and go, hey, it's been 2 weeks. What's going on?
Yeah.
And he doesn't get freaked out. So they wake him up for a little bit, and then they put him right back under.
That's interesting. Poor guy. That's rough, dude. I mean, life has consequences for your choices. I hate to be like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Some people get away with it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
You can't get away with it when he's pushing 500 pounds, I'm sure. He's a big boy.
That's rough, dude. That's rough.
Yeah.
I hate it for his daughter, though. That's terrible. Andrew, you want to introduce the crew?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew McAllister. I'm a principal product manager at Shopware, and with me I have Stevon and Michael, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew.
Stevon? Yeah, go ahead. Michael, go ahead. You're good.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Hey, I'm Michael. I'm also at Shopware, head of design. Been working with them for coming up on a year and a half now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And I'm Stevon Wright. I am a senior software engineer at Shopware.
So
3 years now.
So you're the one we should be blaming anytime anything goes wrong. It's not actually Andrew. He keeps telling me that. He's like, listen, don't look at me. This isn't my fault. I was wondering who he was pointing the finger at. I guess now we know. Can we all have your
He's my
telephone
shield.
number?
We'll make sure to get his phone number at the end of this. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Number and email. Send all your
awesome.
angry messages to this person.
Right. That's what I do with David. Is David gets all the bad feedback, I get all the good feedback, and see it works very, very well for us, right? Because David feeds himself on this hateful and resentful fuel, right? I feed myself on good and positive things, and so it works really well. Like it plans out, right? Andrew,
Afraid to send me hateful stuff. I don't know. I never get anything. They send you the messages, then you screenshot it and send it to me. All the complaints.
I don't want you to be out of the loop.
When we first started the podcast, I was putting my email at the end of the podcast, and I said, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, just email me because I wanted some feedback. Instead, they would Facebook message Lucas. They're like, you have this person on. Why do you guys talk about this? Why didn't you talk about this? Like. And he's screenshotting it and sending it to me. And I'm like, I'm putting my email at the end. I don't know. People don't email. I guess they only Facebook message.
I don't know.
I mean, that's why Andrew's so lucky. He has a big face on our Facebook group, and like I'm behind the scenes. Stevon and I are behind the scenes, so he gets to filter it out for us.
For sure, right? And like everybody knows that if there's a problem, it really is Andrew's problem and fault all in one. Right. And so it's a lot easier to process these things.
I want to ask Andrew, Michael, you guys both look like you're old enough to have Facebook. But
yeah.
Stevon, Instagram, maybe TikTok.
Pretty much neither, but I do technically have accounts on Instagram and Facebook. But again, I don't use any of them.
If you were to use it, like your associates, your colleagues, like, you go out and everybody's like, hey, DM me on ... What would that be?
Would probably be either Instagram or Discord.
Ooh, Discord.
There you go.
Discord makes sense. He's a software guy. Like that makes sense. But the Instagram, there you go. We just shift a little younger there.
Yeah. Andrew still has a MySpace. Okay. Like that's his primary mode of communication at this point.
What are you talking about? He doesn't look that old. Get out of here.
Yeah. Do you even remember your top stuff?
I'm a MySpace guy. That was me.
Same here. I had a MySpace as well.
Oh, did you? All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Is that thing still around? Can we set up
think you can.
MySpaces?
I think you can like go to the website if I remember
think it's
right.
still around, yeah.
Yeah, David's gonna search it right now.
I mean,
Andrew, go ahead, Michael.
Oh yeah, even before that was Friendster, and then like,
Yeah.
PHP bulletin boards.
Yep. ICQ, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the original instant messengers, AIM and ICQ. What was the other big one?
That was it. AIM and ICQ was it.
Yeah.
ICQ was Yahoo, right?
No. ICQ was its own like just random thing
was
out
it?
of yeah.
And Yahoo had its own messenger
Yeah.
thing, and then MSN had its own messenger thing.
Correct.
A little butterfly thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that
Yeah, MySpace is still around, by the way.
gosh,
It's
that
centered around music.
that makes me feel a little old, guys. It's rough.
That's right. They shifted gears once Justin Timberlake bought it, or most of it.
Wait, Justin Timberlake bought it?
Bought MySpace. What?
Yeah.
I'm out of the loop here.
Yeah, didn't he like get the majority shares? It was some big artist like Justin.
It was like $12. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Jump all over that.
I gotta respect Tom though. He started a business and then sold it, and now he just does whatever he wants. He takes photos, enjoys life. I bet you're jealous, David.
No, those guys, they normally come back. I don't know about Tom, but typically they sell off the business for $1 bajillion. Look at the guy who just sold Quest. What's his name? Tom something or another. I don't remember his name. Anyway, he just sold Quest for $1 billion. He's doing a podcast or whatever. He's going to start another business. He's going to get bored. He wants the grind. They all want the grind.
What was it that you were telling me about these shop owners? We noticed that there were these shop owners and these people who sold big businesses like that, and they went on this quest to find themselves and find meaning, and they come back like as hippies with giant beards and like, raggedy.
No, those are the billionaires. The shop owners, they get new wives and then they move to Mexico. That's what they do.
I mean, you're not wrong. Right? Like, that's the sad thing is it's like pretty accurate, right? They find
I'm not saying they dumped the first wife because they did well. It's in the grind. You neglect everything in your life to try to get this business going, and that normally destroys your relationships. And so you alienate you become estranged with your children, you alienate your wife, then there's always a divorce, and then they turn things around, they become successful, and then they get a wife that's half their age.
And see, look, I'm just telling you, that is why I keep telling Andrew that he is changing the face of the auto repair industry, because Shopware means you don't have to grind anymore, David. You can just, it's easy. Shop ownership is easy because of Shopware, David.
Hey, did you see the fight I got into with that Yahoo on the Shopware's ad? So Shopware ran an ad on Facebook with us in it. It was a clip from the podcast. It was Tom Bilyeu and his wife Lisa built Quest, and he sold it for $1 billion.
I don't know how we change subjects that hardcore.
I just wanted
fast.
I wanted to close the loop. I wanted to close the loop. Anyway, so this guy comments on there. He's like, "I don't need this, blah blah blah," and then I can't leave it alone. So I gotta go. Yeah, you probably do, because you're probably using something garbage, or you're writing everything down. And then he goes on this tirade that he keeps his prices low because he doesn't take on unnecessary expenses like shop management systems
or insurance.
Or insurance or tools. Overhead. He's like, he doesn't need any of that overhead. And so he thinks it's just robbery that we are having to raise our prices in order to cover the cost of things like software and All Data and Mitchell and just goofy stuff like that. Yeah. And so he's like, I have my Mitchell and that's all I need. And I'm like, no, dude, you probably need a lot more than that. And you just don't realize it. And I would just give him some snarky reply, and then he'd write a book back. And we went back and forth for a while. You have to look it up. I'll tag you. I'll find it and tag it.
I will, for sure.
You can look it.
Do you also feel a little bit jealous by these guys? Because, here's the thing, David. I don't know if you realize this. These three fellas that are here right now, they are automotive hobbyist, and they still enjoy cars, and they don't cry when cars pass them on the street. And like if a car's on a tow truck in some random place in some random town, they don't have like these visceral flashbacks that make them break down in the middle of a parking lot and just question
Are you
their
guys
life
really
decisions.
hobbyists?
Oh, yeah.
You don't look like a car hobbyist. You look like you play music because you got some instruments in there. Do you tinker?
I
with
guess a little bit of
cars?
both. My tinkering has mainly been with my father. Like my father's the real gearhead, whereas I am his helper, his assistant.
Now, what was your dad
Gopher,
tinkering
like,
on?
does he yell at you? Give me the 13 mil. I said the 13.
Something like that, yeah. Except
You're
I do it
holding
right
the flashlight in the wrong place.
Yeah, the flashlight thing.
What was
wife
Pops working on?
She doesn't come around to help me on cars anymore because that turned into a thing early on. Like hold it up. Sorry, go ahead. What are you working on? Yeah.
That was you. That was for you, Stevon. What are you working on with Pops?
I guess the most recent thing we did was, so my dad just got a new 4-wheel drive Dodge Ram 2500 diesel.
Cool.
And I think the year is 2012, 2015.
Okay. 6, 7.
Yeah. So I don't remember the specs, unfortunately, but,
That's how you know he's a real gear.
That's right. Yeah.
It's got some kind of engine in it. It's loud and it smells.
yeah, because I had recently got a
leaks
Nissan
coolant.
Leaf.
Yeah.
And I have surround view cameras, and I want that. So what he mostly did was he managed to install 4 other cameras.
Nice.
One in the cabin, so he can hook up a gooseneck trailer.
That's pretty slick.
One on the front and one on the right side,
Right.
so the passenger side.
That's pretty slick, dude. So is he pulling a camper with it, or what's his game plan with it?
He has a gooseneck trailer that he uses to move industrial equipment, so excavators
Nice.
and skid steers and stuff.
Very cool.
And he did recently get a camper.
Very cool. Hey, David, I'm buying a camper. That's just it. That's how we're going to travel to podcast shows now. Andrew's built.
I thought you were going to get the all-in-one.
I am.
Get one.
I
Are you
am.
going to pull it with a diesel?
No. I'm going to buy the all-in-one. I might be going a little touch overboard. We won't talk about that. But I don't want to hear it. Andrew's over here building a whole shop to work on one vehicle. Okay, sending me specs, and I'm like, "Are you serious? I think Shopware pays you too much, Andrew."
We got to ask him how often it breaks. That's why he needs a full shop.
I get those text messages too.
What the hell are you working on?
He's got projects.
It's with an S?
Yes.
All-in-one?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, it's a Chevy K10 and 1975. I've put 1 tons on it. Disc brake 14 bolt in the rear. Dana 60 in the front off of a Chevy K30. Let's see what else. Put an underdrive in the transfer case. Rebuilt the transmission to have a 32 spline output shaft.
Nice.
Lots of fun there.
Yeah.
I had just finished it, and I was taking my son off-roading in it, and we were just testing it out. Wasn't planning on doing anything gnarly. End up looking at this one big mountain that we have called Hot Springs Mountain right by my house, and we ended up driving up it. And then I start going off the backside, which I'd never done before. Really, really great idea when you're seeing if it works, Turns out that's a side-by-side trail. 1.
Oh,
2,
no.
it is a full-on Rubicon level rock crawl all the way down. I'm about halfway through, and I turtle myself, which essentially means you get stuck on something in the middle of your vehicle, so your tires aren't always touching the ground. My son has to get out and set up the winch, and we get that all set up and pull it forward. Finally, it's ready to go again, and I try to turn it on. Thing won't start. I'm like panicking at this point, and we go through it, and we're like, okay, it's not fuses. Can't figure it out. I have no tools because I was not planning on off-roading. I was just driving around to see how it went. And we ended up having to hike down to the bottom, call my wife after we get service and say, hey, can you come pick us up? We're not able to get this truck out. And had a guy come out the next day with a Toyota on 40s to explain how hard it was to get out of there. And he drove me up there with some tools. Turns out that I don't know what the problem is. My theory is that the switch for the 2 fuel tanks wasn't working properly. Right. And it wasn't getting fuel. It was starved of fuel, essentially. So I basically pulled off the line and put it directly into the hard line, so it was skipping the switch from between the 2 tanks.
Right.
And was able to drive it out, luckily. But, yeah, that was not the plan.
So I, too, have been in a vehicle that got turtled, except we were running like 45 or 50 mile an hour up the backside of this like field, and when we came across the other side, it was like we were in the air for a while, and then when we landed on this 4-foot tall tree stump, and it like just happened to hit dead on the transmission. And so like as we look over, the transmission is now in like the center of the bench seat, and it's like touching the radio and the dash. It was in a K10 too. It was awesome. It was really great. It was far more eventful than
was it just rusted?
Yes, it busted through. We hit it at like 60, bro. It like literally stopped us. Yeah, it was awesome. It was the same truck. I've got this cousin who is a terrible human being, but like he kept trying to run and get into the truck one day, and I would run. Like he would run up to the truck and I would take off. And so I did that 3 or 4 times. And this dude's known to be like really mean and have a terrible temper. And it happens one time. And I got the bright idea, instead of just taking off, like as he runs, I'll slam on the brakes. And dude, he nails his face on the A-pillar. And it was so crazy because he just like slumped down. Like he just fell right out of the door of the truck and just lays flat on the ground. I was like, whoops, sorry about that, man.
There you go.
Knocked him out.
Yeah, knocked him out cold. Michael, what kind of projects you got?
Oh, I've actually slimmed down. My family kind of takes on far too many projects. I think, but I'm a middle son. I've got a younger brother and an older brother, and between the 3 of us, I think we've owned close to 50 vehicles, including motorcycles.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
oh, snap.
Yeah, and I mean, just. I started like learning how to drive first with video games. Like Need for Speed was like my series.
Yes, dude.
And I remember the first time getting to put that into practice. I was probably 16 or 17, high school, borrowed my parents' minivan, trying to get up to my friend's house. And all of a sudden, like I'm hammering on the gas, trying to get it to downshift so I can pass this big chemical spray truck. Cause I live by orchards. And as I'm getting up, I'm like, all right, I'm going to pass him, but I'm going uphill. And all of a sudden there's an oncoming car. I'm like, oh, this is not going to work. I hit the brakes. Like all 4 wheels lock up because it's like a 1989 Dodge Caravan. No anti-lock brakes. Thing is now sliding at an angle at the back end of this chemical spray truck. And I'm like, wait a minute. I know how to power slide. So I took my foot off the brake, hit the gas, wrenched the steering wheel, got it to turn sideways so I would slow down a little bit faster, and then I hit the brakes again and it worked, and I like barely creeped up, just kissed the bumper of the chemical spray truck. He didn't feel a thing, and I got right back in line, and we just kept on going, and I made it to my friend's house, and I was a little hesitant to tell him the story, and then later on I was like, hey man, I almost like had a face-on collision, but luckily the chemical spray truck was moving just fast enough for me to power slide behind it.
Fit back in behind it. Mm-hmm. Well, so like that was my thing. That's how I got into this, is like my uncles and my brothers and like everybody in my family messed with cars. Right. Mm-hmm. And so like my oldest brother was in IT, and like I went and worked for him for a little bit, and really from the time I was really young, right? Like my very first computer had a 386 in it. Right. Same. And like, this was at the time, like 500 meg hard drives were the biggest, baddest thing on the market, you know?
Right.
And so like that's where I started. And then when I came out of that, and really when we first started tuning on these trucks that were electronic, right? Because I started with mechanical diesel trucks. And then when we started tuning, I began to see the connection between IT and between the cars, right? And like if you go look right now, they were saying that the modern automobile, the average modern automobile has 650 million lines of code, right? Like that's intense. That's insane. The fact they can get it to work is just beyond me. But like that was the thing that really drew me to it because I enjoy networking, right? Like of all the things that I enjoy about a car, the network is the coolest part for me because I enjoy like assigning a specific device and address and understanding how that communication protocol works and finding it and being able to look at other things on the network. I enjoy that. And so like, especially with this move to fiber, this move to Ethernet based network systems within cars, like you can see that connection. It's just the difference in the interface. So like, that's kind of what got me started in it. I don't know what happened to David. Like, David, how did you even end up here?
Car magazines. Stupid car magazines.
Ruined your life, huh?
Yeah.
Wait, the ones with the ladies or without?
Some of them had ladies. I like the engineering ones. Like back in the day, Sport Compact Car was the jam.
Yeah.
That was the best magazine. And so, yeah, every month you would get that and 15 other Carcraft for the domestics.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would just go through there and you'd dream about your project car. And then, you're playing Gran Turismo on the PS1 and Gran Turismo 2. And
man, nostalgic, right?
Yeah,
like
I
that.
got into it and I got into Japanese cars. I had a Mazda and I thought it was so cool. I want to work on cars.
I was like
Bad
young,
idea.
picking up the Car Trader magazines, like picking out all the cars in the Car Trader that I wanted. And like, it just seemed like such a big deal at the time. Now my son's picking them up and like, I'd completely forgotten that I did that. Right. So now when we go somewhere, he picks up that thing. He's only 6, but he's like picking it up looking, Dad, I want this car. No, son, you're not getting a PT Cruiser. That's not going to happen like under any circumstances. Okay. I want a Mini Cooper. No.
PT Cruiser with a 2.4 turbo?
Yeah, that's fast.
Yeah, nah, dude. PT Cruiser with a 383 stroker, Pro Charged, maybe. Okay, I could probably get behind that rear engine at that point, but still,
Yeah.
I don't know. Man.
You gotta go like really old school. You gotta go like Omni, GLH, like
Dude, we have
the Mitsubishi Starion, I think it was called.
Yeah,
It was the Dodge Conquest,
so
2.6 turbo.
a friend of mine named David Downs had one of the Omnis, and it was the fastest car I have ever ridden in. And this car would not do anything but smoke the front tires. Like it did not matter how fast you were
just
going.
smoke in front and torque
Right.
steer.
Dude,
The
it
whole-
was
The whole
crazy.
front end would just go. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah,
And
man.
the tires would just
They were
screech.
intense little cars. They
Because
really
it was
were.
nothing. It was just lag and then all the boost all at once. Because there was no progression, nothing. It was just wah, 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 wah. And
Yep.
then the front tires would break. Yeah.
Look, the one that I've never gotten, it was a Grand National, right? Like I kind of want a Grand National. I think they're pretty cool little cars. I think
They're not little.
no, they're not, but you know what I'm saying. Like until you've seen one that's built like, anyway,
They're rare too, though.
they really are. And they're expensive.
Now
Very
they're expensive. But
Yeah.
you could pick up like a mid-'80s Regal, I think is what it was. Because
Yeah.
they were pretty much the same car. And then you could spec it out if you wanted to.
I kind of feel bad for Monique because she was like, hey, listen, we're going to get the dev team together and you guys are going to talk Shopware. And we are talking cars. This is Andrew's fault. It really is.
my fault.
Like, he's asking me shop questions the other day. And he's like, hey, what about this? And he's designing his shop. And I'm like, dude, this is like hey, man, I love building shops. And then I give him all this advice and he's like, dude, that seems really like expensive. Yeah, my bad, man.
Yeah, what are you telling them? Like, you don't need anything but a lift.
Nah, dude, you got to insulate the underside of the slab. You got to put a really thick vapor barrier in it. Got to make sure you got enough gravel underneath. And then you want to make sure you got plenty of thick concrete. And then you also need in-floor heat, radiant heat. That's the one thing about my shop that I wish I had done. But the engineer said,
Why?
okay, so radiant heat, especially up here, is very valuable because like it helps keep the floor a little bit drier. And in the winter, all of that salt, all that stuff falling off of it, it makes the floor cold. So just walking on it, you'll get cold. And so heating the floor makes it better.
That's what sweaters are for.
Here's the problem. It ain't going to help your feet being cold, fam. The problem
Wear
with
2 socks. Double sock it up.
says the guy who says my employees know we're broke because my one pair of socks I own has holes in it. Right? Like, I can't afford 2 pairs of socks. What are you talking
rocking
about?
the holy socks today.
I wash those things every day, man, just so I got a pair for tomorrow.
You sound like my son. Every time I see him, he has holes in his socks because he walks around outside in them. I'm like, just don't wear shoes. Don't wear socks at all if that's what you're going to do, but don't wear socks outside. But then I look back at my life, and I was that kid. I would wear socks outside.
For sure. Like, I don't know about you guys, but that is something that I have hardcore noticed over the past couple of years is like my son's very, very much like I was when I was a little kid. And so he does things and I'll almost react like my parents reacted to me. And then I stop and I think, man, I remember when I was doing that. And I kind of remember like what my thought process was and why I was doing that. And I remember how it felt when they fussed at me for it. So I've tried to take a little bit different approach and like ask, hey, what are you trying to accomplish? Let me help you with that. As opposed to, but now like, listen, this stuff of putting the cat on the ceiling fan blades and then turning the ceiling fan on is probably not something I should just overlook. I remember doing it. I do remember doing it, but you know, some experiments aren't worth repeating. What, David? You never
Anyway,
put a cat on a ceiling
socks.
fan?
Have you ever worn bamboo socks? They are the best thing ever. And I don't want to get rid of them. Bamboo socks.
I've tried them. They're good.
Bamboo socks. They're awesome. They're soft. They stay soft. You wash them, they're still soft. And they good airflow. So your feet don't get like super hot and sweaty.
Right? I mean,
so holes or no holes, I'm keeping these suckers. They're expensive too. It's not like you can go on Amazon and get them for cheap. You get regular socks cheap, but
hey, listen, let's all go together and buy David some new bamboo socks. I think if we all put a few dollars in the pot, we can get the dude a new pair.
I have like 4 pairs. They all have holes in them. I want to wear them every day.
Oh my God. Andrew, tell me, where are we headed with Shopware? Maybe we should tell the story of how you came to Shopware, because like there were times in Shopware, like we've been with Shopware for a long time, right? And there were times in the past where like development was clunky and development wasn't moving right. And I'm not putting all the credit on you because these guys have some credit due in there too. But like when you started, things kind of started streamlining. We weren't getting updates we didn't know we were getting, and we were getting updates we were told we were getting. So like all of this like started coming together, and it seems like you had a big hand in like how things kind of came together and started going in this really solid direction. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I came from 2 different companies. I wasn't working at them at the same time, but I worked at Workday, which is a very large company. They, I think, when I left, had about 12,000 employees, so you can imagine the size of that. Yeah. So when you work at a big company like that, you learn a lot because there's so many people you can learn from. And then I went to a really small company called Ridgeline, and they were building investment management software, and I just wasn't in a place where I was enjoying what I was doing, which is why I ended up at Shopware, because I like cars. So it was like a perfect match for me of like, hey, I can go work on this software that is doing something that I care about. I can help out small businesses, not people that are investing other people's money and getting rich off of it. Wasn't really my scene. So making that switch was great. And just like that past experience of working at a big company and a small company and really understanding what worked, what didn't at different size companies helped me kind of guide that here. And once I came here, I mean, I'm sure Stevon can add to this since he's been working with me pretty much the whole time I've been here. And he's one of the best engineers I've worked with personally.
For sure. Absolutely.
He's incredible. But anyways, I think a lot of it revolves around being candid with customers and letting them know, hey, this thing, we're planning it. Don't say you're planning it when you're not.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Honesty is the best policy at the end of the day. It's like, we're working on this thing. Hey, I'm sorry, it's going to be late. I just did that the other day with an early adoption that we were working on. It ended up, it's not going to be ready. So the time frame I told them. So, hey, it's going to be a couple days late. They appreciate the conversation. So just honestly being honest and really trying to plan ahead as best as you can. But just like cars, when you start digging into them and you find rust, same thing can happen with the code. You find rust, and I'd love Stevon to kind of add on to that as well.
Yeah, because I mean, like there were definitely some like bumpy spots in the road. There's no doubt with that. And every company that I've ever worked with, or every company that's ever developed a type of software, that's common, right? It's not uncommon. And I think that as shop owners, we sometimes come with a very unrealistic expectation of what that is and how it works. They don't understand the work that goes in the backside of that. Just like David picking on me, like he's not the one who edits this. Don't effing listen to him. What's he talking about, right? Well, it's the same thing. Like there's a layer of complexity behind the scenes that very few people can appreciate. They log in and say, it looks pretty and I want it to work. Great. Do you know what goes into making that happen? Stevon goes into making that happen. He's the one who does that. Buddy, I'm sorry if you got a bunch of haters after this the next time something breaks. Like, that wasn't our intention. We were kind of shifting blame on you a little bit.
It's fine. I can handle it.
So like, what did you find when you first came on, Stevon? What was your experience like?
So my experience had mostly just been learning prior to joining Shopware, but I ramped up fairly quickly, and Andrew came shortly after me, and the company went in a few different directions that ended up changing over time. We started focusing with the previous leadership on stability, and then that ended up going into like more processes, which did end up slowing down development. But as time went on, we made changes to reduce process or to simplify process.
Right.
And get everyone on the same page. And if everyone's on the same page, we can all move faster, even if we seem like we're moving slower.
Right. What were the biggest challenges you faced when you came into Shopware and you kind of took on this new role? Because like you said, you had been learning up to that point, and that bright, new, fresh mind, seeing things from a completely different perspective. What were your first thoughts when you came in and began to make these changes and take from Andrew and Michael's experience to take it and move it in a direction? What were the challenges you were faced with?
Yeah, well, luckily I was fairly confident going in. I knew a lot of the base of what I was capable of, and that translated pretty well to what we had to do at Shopware. However, certain things that are important on somewhat larger systems is performance. So certain features were delayed due to making sure that a bunch of users can use them at the same time without impacting others. And also just making sure that I'm not building what I want to make. Right. I'm building what Andrew wants to make. I'm building what Michael wants to make. As long as we have an understanding about what the customers want, and the one who talk to the customers the most are Michael and Andrew, so they know what needs to be made. And I need to do my best to replicate their ideas. For sure. Well, like I know there were times when there were struggles with, and it's something that David and I talk about a lot, is we talk to a lot of shop owners and they're like, yeah, I didn't like that software because the green button wasn't on the left and it didn't do what I thought it should do when I clicked it. Well, it's not, bro, it's not your old software. It's not going to do what your old software did when you clicked the green button on the left, and it's not going to have the green button on the left. But it's better than that. And like what we try and encourage people to do, especially when they're switching to something like Shopware, is understand how Shopware works first, right? And then build your system around Shopware and use it the way that it was designed to be used, right? Because there was a vision, there was a workflow behind what it did. And so like, is your role more about implementing individual features, or do you look at it from this like broad perspective? Because like, I know Andrew, right? He shows up to meetings with 25 boxes of sticky notes, and he's like, hey, this won't apply to all of you, but it'll apply to some of you. 5,000 sticky notes on a wall later. Hey, I need a mark on each one of these about your priority and what you think of it. Andrew, I can't even read this in an hour, So like, do you think about it in this grand perspective, or do you think about it as a task by task perspective when you're looking at a product like that? A little bit of both. So the way that the development process works is normally Andrew or product in general will come up with something that needs to be built. And this can be a high level idea of what they want the software to do. And this could either be from their own ideas. It can come from other leadership. It can technically come from developers or designers, or come from shops. It can come from shops making complaints or giving suggestions to Andrew about what they need. Right. And obviously, like you said, they can have different priorities. And there can be a lot of things that some shops need and some shops don't need. Then after Andrew gets a better idea about what needs to be built and what specific parts or what their problem is, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
They need to know the problem so that he can figure out what the solution could be. Because different solutions can technically solve the same problem with different levels of effectiveness.
Right. Correct. For sure.
And
go ahead.
Yeah. So, and after that happens, he'll share his ideas with the development team. So, estimating how difficult will this be? How long will this take? Are there any problems you see with this approach? So that's where I'll come in. That's where the team lead will come in, and we'll share our perspective from the technical side mainly, but we can also empathize with some of the users. But at the end of the day, the ones that talk directly with the users will be able to empathize better with those users.
Right.
So that is mainly Michael and Andrew.
For sure. They have a better understanding. Now, from like the limited IT experience that I have, and you know, we talk a lot about like some of the stuff that's been going on in my life, and I'm working on this business that like I didn't have anything to do with, and basically got thrown into it. So now I'm the IT support person in that other business, right? And it's things like fixing the network, and some of the nodes on the network were static and some of them were dynamic, and trying to figure out where each piece of this, and some switches were managed and some switches weren't. I can only imagine, like, there were people who came before you who were working on development and who were working on code and engineering what Shopware is now. I could not imagine stepping into a role like yours after they've already been there doing this thing, and now I have to step in and try and take what they've made, take what they've built, and run with it, right? Because just like up here, dude, every day I'll plug something into the network and the whole network goes down. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, what is going on here? And so it's just this constant work back of solving little problems here and there. And it wasn't intentional. It's not that they did something wrong to create this problem. How does that work as far as an engineer in this instance? I've always been curious about that.
Yep, that is a very valid question. Systems can be pretty big, and they get even bigger as the company gets bigger. When you have a bunch of people contributing code, like you can have hundreds of thousands of lines of code. Luckily, the code can be somewhat separated from each other, and there are different ways that we can separate it.
Okay.
So feature A might not have anything to do with feature B because they don't use any of the same data. They might be in completely different places within the same application. Or something we had done somewhat early in Shopware is some services, so some features, are put in a different application, completely separate on separate hardware. So even if, like, let's say that service was to be slow, it wouldn't really affect the main application at all, and vice versa. But I guess as far as the code goes, yeah, that can be tough. Depending on how the previous people built it, it can either be easy to extend or it can be near impossible to extend without rewriting.
Right.
Luckily, a lot of the cases are fairly minor. Like, there aren't too many rewrites that we have to do. Although we do have scenarios where we rebuild things in newer technology using better tools, which does take some time, but we also try to add more functionality on top of it so it's worth it to customers.
Right. I can really see that, right? Because it almost back to the same analogy, right? Like when we're looking at the network that I'm dealing with right now, the base infrastructure is not sufficient to handle what it's doing, right? Because like for instance, it's got a router at the head of it, and I only have so many IP addresses on this particular router that I can have, and I'm maxing that out, right? And so I could see that, like, hey, if I'm taking this and pushing it all the way to the max limit, now I have no flexibility. And if something goes wrong, I have no way to fix this, right? Like, I have to start pulling things back out to fix it. So I could only imagine being in your position to where I'm trying to work back into that. That's a really interesting perspective. Now, Andrew, Michael, how do you guys communicate that back to the shops? Because there again, I'm going to bring up the deal with David and I and the editing, and Braxton gets mad about it too. I'm like, I just do this. And it's like, I don't understand what goes into just doing that. Is it you two that have to come back to the general user and say, hey, I can't do this, but I can do that? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so there's a kind of a few cases we have here. I actually want to use a current example. I'm sure you've seen it on Facebook and everywhere else, but parts merge. Everyone wants parts merge. Stevon is currently working on a completely new inventory page, because if we want to do parts merge, we got to redesign that page and make it much more valuable. You're going to be able to select all and not have to go to the second page. It'll select everything. It's going to work very similar to the new AR page or the open jobs page as well.
That's so slick.
So it's going to look just like that, and it's going to have KPIs up at the top that just tell you, hey, if I select a set of parts, what's my total inventory for those parts? So you'll be able to do all sorts of fun stuff there. And like you said, when we do these rebuilds, we also add features, right? But to do parts merge, we had to fix the foundation of inventory first. So it's been a long trail, and people are like, why are you doing this other stuff? Well, if we didn't deliver anything and we just worked on parts to get to parts merge, people would also be mad, right? So we have to, put a set of resources on that, and they've been focused on it. And you're going to see some really cool updates coming in the next few months around inventory specifically to get us towards parts merge. And then we'll have that. And it's actually going to be smart enough to say find and merge. So you can just go and look through a list and say, yeah, these should all be merged. These are the same, because our system can say, hey, these look like they're the same pieces.
That is slick, dude. That is awesome.
So when communicating that, to get back to your question, generally, when people ask, hey, like, what's going on with this? We'll let them know, hey, we're working on it, but we have some work we need to do up front to really get there. So it's going to take some time. And at the end of the day, that's the best we can do. If I really need to give an analogy, it's like you start digging into a car, and maybe, I don't know, give me an example. Maybe it's you need to replace a wheel seal or something on the car. Right. And you start digging into it, and it turns out you have to replace the axle shaft because it's bent. And because the axle shaft bent, it screwed up maybe the ring and pinion, and you have to just basically redo the whole axle or something like that.
Right.
So it's like when you start digging in, you're like, okay, well, we have more work to do. And that's when Stevon and the rest of his team comes to me and says, hey, Andrew, I know you want to do parts merge, but there's all this other stuff that we need to do first. And how do you want to handle that?
To make it even feasible.
Exactly. Right. And then I go and look at what are our problems in inventory, because if we're going to rebuild this thing, I'm not going to rebuild it the same way it is and leave all the problems. So what are problems we can solve as we do this change that aren't too complex, where we're going to just stretch out that timeline to forever and be able to provide value as well.
Well, I mean, it's a lot, right? Like, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of moving pieces. And so selecting what it is that needs that and what needs to be done, like you said, hey, I don't want to make things worse. And I also want to make things better, but I don't want to spend all of our time on this one thing. And, one of the ones that we always get questions about, or people bring up in the groups and things like that. And I'm really blessed because I have you guys to talk to, and I'm able to talk to Monique, and I'm able to talk to everybody in the organization who says, hey, you need to know this. If you're asking this question, here's the deal. Right. And so end users typically don't take the time to try and have that connection, try and talk to anybody. They like to get online and complain about it, but that's pretty much where the communication stops. And so one of the things that keeps coming up is analytics. And you and Monique both said, hey, like, you don't understand. There's this thing and this whole thing has to be fixed. And it's not as simple as me just walking in and flipping the switch and saying, this is fixed now. There's a lot of moving pieces that go into that. And it's in, my understanding is there's parts of it that are in progress now, but it's not as simple as just saying like, hey, fix it. Okay. Like, sure. You want me to fix it? 5 years later, I'll have it fixed, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that one's a whole beast. I am not personally involved in that, but definitely it's we're working on it, and I could say that confidently. You're going to see some really cool stuff, but it's not going to be for quite some time.
Yeah, for sure. And they've got the right guy on the job, right? Like he's called me and said, "Hey, what about this?" And I'll start talking. He's like, "Yeah, but that doesn't really, Lucas, that doesn't make sense. What about this?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I don't know my business as well as you do. Maybe I'm the one who should be asking questions here, right?" So I was like talking to him, and he was breaking down some of the thought process and like what goes into that. And I don't think shops appreciate how much work goes into making Shopware what Shopware is, right? Because it's a lot of work, a lot of work. You guys do a great job on it for sure.
Thank you.
I know that you sent me a list, and we typically don't do lists, but I got so excited about it as I'm like going down through here, and you know, you bring up that, hey, maybe if people have issues or have needs, they need to be communicating them more clearly. That's something I'm guilty of with software. So I will want a thing, but I don't know how to convey to you, Andrew, this isn't working, or this is what I expect. A lot of times I will message support and say, "Hey, I've got an issue with this." And they're like, "Hey, I think you deleted a column a little prematurely there. If you go back and export that again, look, is there not a column for that?" And so it's things where I'm not paying that much attention, or I'm not really digging into the issue and understanding what the issue is. How can Shopware users have a better experience with you guys and communicate more clearly? What do you need to be communicated to you guys when they think there's a problem or there's something that should be a feature that's not a feature? What does that need to look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing, and you might think, hey, this maybe isn't the most important thing to me, but it really is. I just need to understand, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Just going back to what Stevon said earlier, really understanding, hey, where do you hit that roadblock in your shop, and why is this causing problems? Because one, that helps me understand how big of a pain point is it for you. Two, I can then relate that to other shops that are having the same problem. If every shop gives me solutions, then I have to sit there and go look at their different solutions. They all might solve the same problem, and we might take 5 of those things and say, okay, these 5 solutions can actually all be solved by this thing. You know, it's that 2 birds, 1 stone type of thing. But if I understand the problems and where you're hitting those roadblocks, it's much easier to then go and reach out to shops and understand, work with Michael and Stevon to figure out what's the solution to this problem that 30 shops are having today. And, you know, those are the 30 that have told us about it. But there's probably, you can probably 10x that every time.
For sure. And I don't think that some of the shops even realize they're having issues. We've seen some of their management, right? Like, what's the biggest issue that you see that shops have? And not even necessarily, you know, Shopware dependent. What are you hearing the most as far as issues go?
Yeah. Well, from a request perspective, it's definitely cleaning up and fixing inventory. We see all sorts of problems around, hey, my inventory is a mess. My inventory needs to be cleaned up. How do I do that? And to be frank, we need to build those tools to help you, right? So that's where I see most of the roadblocks right now is with that. I don't know, Michael or Stevon, if you have anything you wanted to add to that.
Here's what you tell the shops, by the way. If you're keeping too much inventory, you know, you got to pay taxes on that stupid inventory at the end of the year, right? Like it's all just taxable junk. Just get rid of it. Don't keep it.
It's that, but it's also Shopware could do better with the nomenclature of stuff in inventory, because we don't make it very clear that our inventory, when you go to that page, is every part you've ever ordered. And then if you click that stocked button, that's supposed to be your list of things that you actually like to have on your shelf. Whether or not you have it on your shelf is up to you if you've ordered them and tracked them. But some of that stuff we're working on fixing as well, because it isn't super clear today that when you go to inventory, it's literally every part you've ever ordered. And there are reasons for that and why Shopware has built it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to piggyback on like what Andrew was saying, when we're trying to understand from the shop owner's perspective, a lot of times they come with solutions like, oh, if you just do it this way or put this here or solve this one piece, it helps us to understand more context. Like, what time of day are you doing this? Are you always rushed? Is this something that happens frequently? Do you need to be able to share this with other people? Because the way Shopware is built, like when I first came into Shopware, I saw the legacy. It was like I could look at the way Shopware was designed, since I'm on the design side, and I was like, ooh, I can tell, almost like reading a palm, like, okay, this was customized for this particular segment of shop owners. This was kind of customized for this segment of shop owners. And what we've been trying to do, at least since I've come on, is kind of unify that experience. So that way we're doing a little bit of both. We're learning still from how shop owners are working with the software, but then we're also pushing efficiencies because we can see things kind of globally and help teach shop owners a little bit better way to do something. Obviously, we're not like the big brother saying you need to do it this way. And you can kind of see that in the way Shopware is designed, because there's a lot of different nuances that work for all these different types of shops, from the large enterprises down to the small shops. And I think that's been something really radical to see as I came in to help push process with Stevon and the engineering team and Andrew, and even working with our previous leadership team to just have more communication, so that we also almost teach ourselves how to be more efficient in how we're building the software, and then relay that back to the shop owners. And like, hey, if we got it wrong, like a good example, like we put out open jobs and it kind of fell flat on its face. And they're like, can we have the old page back? We're like, no problem. Let's put it back. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's get more feedback and ask better questions to our shop owners. And then boom, re-release, and then it was well received. Like we did. I think that was a great learning experience. And it's like one of the first features that I worked on coming into Shopware.
For sure. And dude, I see that a lot, right? Like, because it's just like a diagnostic questionnaire in the shop. And I was talking with my team this morning, and I'm like, hey, we need to know when it happens, what temperature is it at, are they turning left? Like, get me more details. And they because the client, all they know is it doesn't work. But I have to investigate to understand what doesn't work, when doesn't it work, and to get to the bottom of why it doesn't work, right? And that doesn't happen without data. And sometimes I watch the comments in the Facebook group, because a lot of those comments come back and it's like, dude, you're not telling the whole story. You're missing part of the story. There's something else here that we all know you don't realize you're missing it, but there's part of this that we're not getting. Hey, tell the whole story, right? And it leads to things actually getting fixed. Now, I know there's some really cool updates, and I was blown away by this. Monique's going to kill me. It's her birthday tomorrow, by the way. Monique and I were talking a while back, and she said, we're working on this, and we're working on this, and she gives me this whole list. And she said, some people are going to be really frustrated because we're going to release this before this, and I just know we're going to hear about it. And it was that they're releasing consumer financing that is like built in some way, shape, or form eventually before they're releasing something else that people want. And I'm like, dude, that is fantastic. I don't have to like go to that consumer and say, oh my gosh, here's financing in case you don't have the money to pay your bill. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even have to do any of that. And she's like, no, but some people are not going to like that. Some people are going to be frustrated by that.
Do I have to get 360?
Huh? Yes, David, you have to get 360 no matter what. Like, it's just mandatory to be on the podcast anymore. You have to be a 360 customer. Didn't you remember we were in Kansas City and Lisa told you that?
She sounded overly confident, and I was a little sus on that.
See, this sounds like a design problem. Like, I would start interviewing David. Like, what's holding you back? What do you need to push yourself into the 360 realm?
I answered the question.
Let me tell you what's holding David back.
No, I told her.
How much time do we have?
I told her there was something very specific that I needed from my credit card processor, and she's like, I think we have that. And I'm like, I called like 16 times because Lucas kept bugging me, and you guys said no. And then she's like, she texted somebody, and she's like, yeah, we have that. I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure they do. I haven't checked, but that was the issue.
That's another great thing about like Shopware 360, kind of this whole our business model. I was actually at a tire shop, and the guys, they were running Tire Guru, which is a sister company, and they were having issues working with me. And I was like, you know what? I think if you just contact support, they can fix this with your point of sale system right now. And sure enough, like within 5 minutes, I still was waiting on my tires, and like they got it fixed. They're like, dude, can you help us with a few other things? So then I just like walked around the counter, and I was like, oh boy, this is great. And I love being able to like show them that you have this direct line. We have great support, and we love to respond and hear what they need. And for me as the designer, getting to see it firsthand, like I would love to just multiply myself and be in every shop and just understand how all these shop owners work and where they find frustrations, and then be at that moment where they have this solution in their mind and I can like talk it out with them.
That's pretty slick. And I mean, it makes a difference because like you guys go to shops too, right? Mm-hmm. And you're able to see it from that outside perspective, and you're able to see like from a different perspective. And I think that's important.
Do you guys interview the shops that you guys go to and say, hey, what shop management system do you guys use? And then if they
all the time.
Shopware, you guys are like, who are you using?
Oh yeah, my
Mitchell,
my diesel mechanic. He's on Shopware. He's just like a one shop guy. I've got like an F350, and we have a great relationship because I get in there lots of 2000 with the 7.3 turbo diesel, and I mean the motor is going to keep running great, but I'm like, man, those injectors.
The rest of the truck fell apart around it years ago.
Damn door handles, man. Those damn door handles.
I don't know why they went plastic.
Yeah, I don't know why, and nobody's like made metal ones, big beefy metal ones.
Mm-hmm. No, they do. Around. You can buy billet door handles.
No,
not from Ford.
No,
David, that's not a from business Ford. Idea for you.
Yes,
billet door handles too.
See, David, you can still be one of us.
No.
So, Andrew, are we getting consumer financing? I guess
yeah, absolutely. It is coming. I believe the timeline is April or May. So it's on its way. They're actively working on it. It is through 360 payments. I believe Wisetack and Synchrony are two of the bigger lenders that they work with as well. And yeah, we're pretty excited to deliver that. The idea is like we want to make it as seamless as possible for the customer and not just for the shop. So how can we make it so that they can discreetly apply if they need it and not necessarily have to always go directly to talk to the shop about, hey, I don't know if I can pay for this right now. That conversation can get awkward. So the way we're building it is to try and mitigate that. Obviously, there's going to be situations where you're going to have those discussions still, but yeah,
for sure. And so that integration, I think, will be really cool, and I think that'll be a nice stepping stone because it takes some of the stress off the consumer as well. Because it's kind of embarrassing for some people to say like, "Hey, do you offer financing?" And I don't know what the deal is. Like,
it's
some
the people that
in,
enthusiastically ask for it. Those are the ones you got to worry about. Like, hey,
why?
Because they're not going to get approved. They're asking for finance because they don't have any money. And they're just going to try to borrow the money, but they're not going to get approved because they probably have already done this like 50 other times. They didn't pay the bill.
I'm just going to tell you that I have got people who come in and they want to finance it, and they pay it off within the promotionary whatever time frame so you don't pay interest on it. But they use it for like financial growth and improving their credit score, and like that's just how they roll.
I get people that ask for it, but I'm talking about the ones that very enthusiastically ask for it. Do you guys take payments?
Yeah, you gotta watch those.
No, I don't.
If that's what they start with, that's a problem.
That's the first thing they ask. Yeah,
you probably have the wrong person in your shop.
I don't take payments. No.
The other thing I should have called out is that is the early adoption period that I called out. So we'll be starting to turn it on for.
Oh no, it's too late now. It's got to be turned on for every. No, you've already said it.
Everybody doesn't have it in April. We're gonna have. torches and pitchforks coming at us.
Not us. It's Andrew. I'm telling you, this is Andrew. This is an Andrew
We're
thing.
gonna get blamed too. I feel we're gonna get blamed.
I also know that you mentioned something that has been asked a lot, and my shop manager walks through the shop on a daily basis saying, "Hey, we really need required fields on ROs." Is that gonna happen?
Yeah, that one's actually the closest to being done. We're on the final stages of that, but essentially, I mean, you'll be able to require
Required
the
like what?
supervisor. Sorry,
Like what? What are you requiring? I thought that was
getting ready
already
to tell you.
button
You
for,
go
like,
getting ready to
blabbering.
tell you.
Didn't there an odometer thing like it's required already, right?
Yep, odometer is required already, so we're going to be adding in the ability to require the service advisor upon close if you'd like to. These are all optional, so you don't have to require them if you don't want to. You can require the label either at start or close. All the different customer details, so address, phone number, email address, source, reason for visit. All of those are options. And then in addition to that, vehicle details. So year, make, model, VIN, and plate.
That's pretty slick. I think that there should be a required 4Cs or 5Cs component to every job line. David thinks it's stupid. I'm not even going to ask for it. Okay. I'm just telling you it should be there. I mean, clearly should be there. David doesn't do documentation. Car broke, needs to be fixed.
We take a picture.
Here's how to fix.
Car broken. That's why it's at the shop. Step 1. Step 2, here's what broke. Snap. Step 3, here's the car fixed. You get it back. Done.
You need notes though.
No, I don't need a book. Nobody reads the notes, dude.
I don't.
That's
put
why you do the
notes in
pictures.
there
Nobody reads the
I don't-
notes.
That's for the judge.
For the judge? You think
Yeah.
he can read through your book of notes? And he's like, this sounds like ChatGPT. And you go, ooh. Yeah, exactly. So here's the real question. When are you guys going to integrate some kind of AI nonsense into the notes section so you can just be like,
Oh,
hey,
man.
explain how this works so Lucas doesn't have to go to ChatGPT and then dump it into the notes section?
Anyway, I'm not going to say
I
anything.
They're like, no.
Don't have a necessary timeline for that one. We have discussed it though, but it's not really something that we prioritize quite yet.
There was this thing going around, and it was like, make me sound smarter, make me sound stupid, make it sound like who was it that was going to write it? Like there were different people that you could have write it, like Morgan Freeman or whoever.
Yeah.
I need that in the notes section at Shopware. Okay, I'm just telling you, I need those selections. Right, I'm gonna need that. Hey. One of the things that came up, and I know that we're Shopware people, right? But one of the things that came up that I thought was really neat was some of the Tire Guru features. And there are a lot of tire shops that use Shopware. Is there any chance, especially that pricing component, ever comes to Shopware? Because I know it's gone to other SMS companies. Is there ever a chance that we could see something like that in Shopware?
There's absolutely a chance. I'm actually in the early stages of talking with Brett, who's the engineer over there, to see kind of like what could we do to grab some of those tire features for shops that are doing 10% tires, but mostly general repair, and how could we make that available to folks over at Shopware potentially. But right now it's discussions. It's discovery. We're really early stages, so can't commit to anything right now. That something will happen for sure, but we are actually talking to them about that actively.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. This has been a blast, and we just have to do it more often because I think if we continue to do these, many of our listeners will pick up on things, and hopefully we can get you guys better feedback so you can really understand what the market's looking for and understand what their real problems are, and they can understand what it is that you need from them. And that's the hope of doing these. So I can't wait to do some more of them.
Thanks. Really appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely.